So I've been kind of obsessed with Mario 64 recently. The fan-made ports for both PC and Switch, and even the release of Super Mario 3D All-Stars have made it really accessible, so I took this as an opportunity to play through the game again and again and again. I played it a bunch. I mean, what can I say? There's something so satisfying about wandering around Peach's castle and looking at all the artwork. It makes me wish I had cool stuff like that on my walls. And thanks to today's sponsor, I can get all the cool artwork I want printed on high quality metal frames thanks to Displate. I do love a good poster. I mean, just look at my office. The problem with traditional posters is you need to get them framed and then carefully mount them to the wall in order for them to look nice. Thankfully with Displate, the artwork is printed on a solid piece of metal, so you don't need to worry about framing at all, and mounting them to the wall is super simple thanks to their magnetic mounting system that lets you easily level and get it properly placed on the wall in just a few moments. They've got a bunch of Legend of Zelda, Mario, and other Nintendo themed designs to look at, and they're all amazing. On top of that, they're even customizable, so if you got some of your own artwork you'd like to hang, you can do that as well. Check out the link in the description to check out Displate's website, view the art, and learn more about what they have to offer. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring this part of the video. Now back to Mario 64. I got to a point where I was playing it pretty much every day for at least a few hours, and even practicing some speedrun strats for fun. Now I'm in no way a purist, but I find myself in this weird category of people who think playing Mario 64 on anything other than the original hardware is doing the game a disservice. Not because of the original look of the game or because I think emulators are evil. No. It's more so that the analog stick of the N64 was so precisely tuned for that game, it's really hard to get that same level of precision with anything else. Even third-party controllers don't give you the same experience. And turns out I'm not really the only one who thinks that way. A few friends of mine and even the people over at My Life in Gaming pretty much agree with me, especially when they said this.
And I believe that poor reimplementation of stick functionality in later releases has had a majorly negative impact on the game's current perception.
That being said, the ports do a much better job than both the Virtual Console and emulators in terms of bringing back that original feel for me. But there are definitely some issues. Super Mario 3D All-Stars, at least from the bit that I played, actually felt a bit more akin to the N64 version, at least in terms of how Mario accelerates in relation to the control stick. But it also has its own share of issues that I won't get into in this video. So for me, playing with an original controller will always be the best way to experience the game. Regardless of how I played it though, I've just come to the conclusion that Mario 64 is probably one of my favorite games of all time, and I just wanted to talk about it for a little bit because it's such an interesting title if you think about it. The game had a huge impact on the world of 3D gaming, and despite the fact that it released in 1996, it's held up far better than you would have expected it to, and it's still worth playing today. That being said, let's talk about Super Mario 64. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Mario 64 is perfect by any means. Some of the level design can be, well, messy would be a nice way of putting it. But overall, for Mario's first 3D outing, it's honestly astonishing how good of a job Nintendo made making the transition to 3D. I mean, there's a reason this game is responsible for a lot of what makes modern 3D platformers so good. It's just got such a solid foundation that it was a no-brainer to try and mimic it and utilize what Nintendo figured out to make other games like it. So right off the bat, the game places you in the castle courtyard. Now I could make a whole video about why the castle courtyard is a genius place to start the player because it gives you a free roaming area to get acquainted with the game's controls and how Mario moves, but thankfully, I don't have to because it's been covered by a bunch of other YouTubers, so, you can check those videos out on your own time, after you finish this one. Point is, it's all true. It's funny how underappreciated this area is now to anyone who's played a modern game, but remember, Nintendo went from this to all of this. So it was a pretty big leap. That being said, the concept of the game is pretty simple. Bowser kidnaps Peach, Mario needs to explore the castle, jump into paintings to enter different worlds, and collect Power Stars. The game has a total of 120 Power Stars, with each stage, minus the Bowser levels, having 6 stars. Each star has its own objective and title, but the beauty of Mario 64 is that the game gives you a lot of freedom to go out of order and do what you want to do. You can pretty much get most stars in any order you want to, and I'd go as far as to say the game even encourages that. I mean, look, they flaunt this star right in front of you in the very first level, Bob-omb Battlefield. I know this isn't my main goal, but there's nothing stopping me from getting this star first instead of going all the way up the mountain to fight King Bob-omb. Now yes, getting all 120 stars does give you the minor Easter egg reward of having Yoshi appear on top of the castle, but it's not really anything too special. The extra leniency is appreciated though, because it means you can skip levels or missions that give you a hard time, or be like me and only play the fun levels and never step foot in Rainbow Ride because boom, that level. Right, so you can essentially boil the game down to getting from point A to point B. And while that might be an oversimplification to make the game sound boring, it's actually the total opposite. The way you accomplish that goal is incredibly fun and satisfying because Nintendo did one of the best things in the world for Mario 64. They gave Mario an extremely robust moveset. You've got your standard 1, 2, 3 triple jump, you've got the wall kick, side flip, dive, and backflip. There are so many ways to move Mario, and it all feels incredible. The best part is all these moves can be linked together almost effortlessly to create some really satisfying movement and tech that lets you just go about anywhere within reason and do so in a way that is both fluid and fast. It allows you to think creatively and use all of Mario's moves and the level design itself to your advantage. Sure, you could climb a mountain to get all the way to the top of a peak and then grab a star, or you could link together a few well-timed jumps and wall kicks and do the same thing much faster. This moveset is another reason why I think Nintendo was encouraging players to get stars and do things out of order, because that's exactly what this moveset allows you to do. I think Mario 64 is one of the perfect speedrunning games because of it. Not only is it easy to understand from a viewer's standpoint, it's also really satisfying and fun to play from a runner standpoint. Although, maybe I am a little bit biased because it's one of only 3 games that I've ever actually attempted to do a speedrun of, but still, the movement in this game is unparalleled. Even new Mario games like Sunshine or Odyssey, which is the newest 3D Mario at the time of recording, doesn't quite hit the same level of fidelity. Don't get me wrong, I love the movement options in Odyssey, and I think Mario's movement in that game is wonderful and extremely fun, but it's not quite as chaotic and free as Super Mario 64 is. And it's that small amount of chaotic difference that I think makes Mario 64 just slightly more fun and satisfying to move around in for me. That being said, not everything was as great as I remember it being. I had a lot more issues with the camera in my subsequent playthroughs. Sometimes it just refused to cooperate and give me the angle that I wanted. It mostly only happened in tight areas, but I remember sometimes it just refused to work when there was seemingly nothing in the way. It was very strange. I don't think it's a deal breaker by any means, and again, for Mario's first 3D outing, it gets the job done. But I'm glad the gaming industry has progressively improved camera controls, because that is something you can definitely take for granted these days. It's also funny since Nintendo made the camera like a physical character in the game because the concept of a third-person camera like in Mario 64 was so incredibly new. Another place where the game falters is its level design, specifically the later levels. In my opinion, Mario 64 is at its best when the levels give you a large open area to move around and explore in. Levels where each star is spread out and given its own unique treatment, and levels are non-linear in nature. The later levels like Rainbow Ride or Tick-Tock Clock, even Tiny Huge Mountain, are all designed on the more linear side of things. In Tick-Tock Clock, for example, 3 stars just involve you climbing your way up the clock, and that's it. It might not seem like much, but keep in mind each time you collect a star, it boots you out of the level and back to the castle. You need to then jump right back in the painting and start from the very beginning of the level. There are some exceptions to this, like the 100 coin stars, so the ability to keep progressing in the level is possible, but they just chose not to do that for some reason. If I had to guess, it's probably because it would have made the game too short, but who knows. Thankfully, that is something they did address in future Mario games by either starting you in a different area, or just doing what Odyssey did and letting you stay in the level after you collect a moon. I understand they could get away with that in Odyssey since it's a much bigger game with huge levels, but it does make the gameplay feel more cohesive in my opinion. Again, I would consider this a minor issue because, as I said, if you're only going for the bare minimum, you don't need to play the later levels all that much and you can stick to the more fun and open levels. Now lastly, I do want to talk about the hub world just a little bit. I love Peach's Castle as the hub. It's so fun being able to run around the courtyard, explore the back garden, run around the basement area, and finally reach the upper levels of the castle. It's all interconnected and filled with secrets, some in the form of entire levels, some in the form of free stars from toads or bunnies, and even some power-ups. As simple as Peach's castle is, I think it might be my favorite hub world of all the 3D Mario games. Sometimes I'll just run around the castle doing basically nothing at all, just going around, jumping, and having a good time because that's just something fun to do in this game. Now, speaking of power-ups, the game has a total of 3 power-ups. The wing cap, which lets you fly around for a limited time, and it's probably the most fun to play with. The vantage cap that makes you invisible and able to pass through fences, and finally the metal cap, which makes Mario sink like a rock so you can walk underwater. Once you unlock these power-ups, they become available in certain stages, and you can use them to reach stars that might not have been accessible before. Because these power-ups only last a limited amount of time and are only available in set stages, it gives them a lot more utility in my opinion, because you know if you see that box, there's something nearby that needs it. This adds another tool that you as the player need to figure out how to use to the best of your ability, and it makes using them feel special since you can't just bring them into a level and use them as you please. Now, I don't feel like I need to talk about the graphics or the music because it's Mario 64. We all know what it looks like, and we all know what it sounds like. Honestly, the game kinda looks dated by today's standards, I'll give you that, but it's still serviceable, and we all know the credits theme is actually better than Dire Dire Docks, even if most people won't admit that. Look, I'll summarize by saying this. Super Mario 64 is a great game. It's held up remarkably well given it was Mario and Nintendo's first 3D adventure. And even though it has a few rough edges, it's still really fun and satisfying to play. It's enjoyable through and through, so no matter if you're looking for a bit of nostalgia or just want a chance to finally experience this classic game, I'd say there's no better time to play Mario 64 than right now. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, a like rating would be greatly appreciated. If you want to see more of my videos, consider subscribing. Once again though guys, my name is Matt, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.